Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Lakers fans were excited when the team re-signed Max Christie, but at least one person thinks it might have been a mistake. We'll explain next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one's always free and never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 25,000 subscribers to the channel, all of whom are wondering whether or not Max Christie will be ready to make a leap this season. The Lakers certainly need it. They certainly signed him, Andy, to a contract that indicates they believe he will be capable of playing meaningful minutes for this team. We'll get into at least one critic of that contract here in a second. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right. So, Andy, we got some proclamations from Christian Wood. We've got some strategy talk from Shaq. A few things popping up over the weekend. But the main thing that got our attention was a story from John Hollinger at The Athletic talking about the headline of the article was the NBA's most under-scrutinized moves, I should say, from Emmanuel Quickley to Max Christie. So you can see Max Christie, he believes was a signing that went under the radar and shouldn't have. And from Hollinger's perspective, the Lakers, who gave Christie a 4-year, $32 million contract, made a mistake.
John Hollinger basically considers it an issue because, to begin, he doesn't clearly think that much of Christie as a player. From part of the article, quote, the problem was that the Lakers tried actually to play him a bit, 940.
Right. Countering the idea that like Christie didn't have a chance to play last year, didn't have a chance to prove himself.
Right. That he gave him quite a bit of minutes, 944 minutes across 67 games. And B, he wasn't very good, 8.4 PER, minus 3.6 BPM. And C, he couldn't crack the full strength rotation of what was arguably the worst bench in the league. I would disagree with couldn't crack as opposed to was not allowed to crack, or that every time he attempted to crack it, Darvin Ham was repairing the foundation so nobody else could sneak through. He did note that Christie had a great 2023 Summer League. He's a good athlete. He's got, as Hollinger put it, the basic hazy outlines of a 3-and-D guy. But nonetheless, Hollinger clearly considers Christie a reach in terms of his overall potential or just being ready to cash in on that potential.
Right.
But the other thing that Hollinger noted was he felt that just re-signing Christie was in and of itself an opportunity cost because his cap hold basically took the Lakers out of being eligible for a taxpayer mid-level exception of around $5 million and change, and that by not having that $5.2 million available, the Lakers lost out on the ability to sign a player who maybe could have fit into the Max Christie role better and more realized than Max Christie himself.
I say this as somebody who probably pumped the brakes on Christie more in his rookie season than most fans did. I think
certainly more than I did.
Right. Where if you let's stop and actually look at the impact that he's having as a player. What happens when Max Christie is on the floor and all that kind of stuff. And while I think the potential was obviously there, and he played, I think, very well for what was he, 19 at that point? 19-year-old, player. There was a lot to like there, but for really getting upset that he wasn't playing high leverage minutes, I was like, you know what, let's dial it back a little bit. We need to see it. He often does good things, but the net effect when he plays is not nearly as strong as sort of the excitement and the idea that you have this second round pick who looks like he's going to be a really good player. I mean, that is important for a team like the Lakers, especially to find that kind of player. So I get some of the, I need to see it. It needs to go beyond vibes and all that kind of stuff. Perception that, Hollinger, and I'm sure he's not alone. Lakers fans, I know, are going to roll their eyes because it's John Hollinger and all these other things. I can guarantee you that he is not the only person who thinks that Max Christie may not be quite ready or worthy of that kind of deal. Last year, though, I do think it was not fair to Christie. I don't think it was fair to judge him by what went on last year. If you look at his net impact, there are other players on the team, for net rating and stuff like that were worse than him. His on-off numbers were better as a sophomore than as a freshman, despite the fact that he wasn't really given any kind of regular role to sink into, even like a minor one. There wasn't anything that he could find regularity in. He certainly, I 100% agree with you. It's not that he couldn't crack the rotation. He wasn't given an opportunity. And if he was, I think he could have played and probably would have played as well as Taurean Prince. I think he certainly would have done, contributed in ways that went beyond what Cam Reddish ultimately gave them. So I get the skepticism and like the idea that you can't assume that Christie is going to be able to step up into the role the Lakers need him to play, or that he's going to be a bust at 8-32. But I think Hollinger's evaluation of last season is too harsh.
Well, if I'm being totally honest, and full disclosure, you and I both know John Hollinger. We've known him for a long time. We like him. Mm-hmm. We both think he's very good at his job. But the analysis, at least that he offers, candidly feels like somebody who just looks at the numbers as opposed to actually watching Christie play.
Well, I mean, the problem is too, it's like you can't wait. Like you would have had to invest a lot of time, say like people who watch 82 games a year and the playoffs, just to find him. If you tune in to 30 random Lakers games, there's a lot of Lakers games. Like if I watch 30 games of the Oklahoma City Thunder, I'm going to have a pretty good background on what the Thunder do. If I watch 30 Laker games, I might not have seen Christie at all in 20 of them.
Well, and also to know that some of those minutes he had were in garbage time. And,
sure.
Even by garbage time standards, the Lakers garbage time crew was true garbage. Like the time was not really so much garbage as the way that they played in that time. That's what really put the garbage in garbage time. And I'm not going to hold that against Max Christie, but I also think if you watched him play, you would at least see certain things that he did well, but also see the way at times he was not utilized well. But the other, and I think even larger issue that I have with Hollinger's contention, beyond the fact that, again, respectfully to John, he does not sound to me like somebody who actually saw a lot of Christie, or at the very least did not explain this in a way that reflected having seen a lot of Christie on the court, is the idea that there was an opportunity cost for the Lakers, specifically in signing Christie as opposed to maintaining that taxpayer mid-level exception. I really would dispute Hollinger's assessment there. So
it's, are there wing players really that were available at that price, that could have filled the role? I mean, I can think of a couple names of players, but wing guys, that's a different story. We'll get to it next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Game Time, and my daughter is 13. We've bonded a lot over the years through music. Right now, it's Frank Ocean that she's obsessed with him, and he hasn't put out an album in about 8 years, but she's seen some rumors on the internet that he could be back in the studio, which could mean a tour, and I've promised her if Frank Ocean tours, I will get us tickets, even though I know they're going to be insanely impossible to get for most people, but not those who use Game Time, because they make it easier. You can actually look forward to finding tickets. I love Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier, because it filters out all the confusing, flowery verbiage, and it shows you just the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Labor Day sale, 50% off tickets to the Dodgers at Diamondbacks. So if you are a Dodger fan who happens to be in Arizona or willing to make a little roadie. It's exclusively on Game Time, limited availability and supply. So get on it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off.
Thanks again for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. Of course, there's no offseason in the NBA. It's why we do 5 shows a week. And Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less, keeping you informed and entertained. Nobody does it better than Locked On NBA. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I mean, you could say, like, maybe if they had 5 point whatever million, maybe you could make a play for Tyus Jones. Okay, great. Tyus Jones doesn't play the same position as Max Christie does. And unless you can move D'Angelo Russell or Gabe Vincent, you've just kind of created more of a logjam at a position that isn't really one of need yet. Gary Trent is closer to a wing. But I don't actually know if you had offered him, say, 3 and 16 or something like that, if he'd have taken it. Not at the time. So, he was looking for a much larger deal than the 1-year deal that he got, and he wants to go right back on the market. I don't think he sees himself as a guy who's going to sign for $5 million. So, like, of the players that were really prominent that signed for $5 million and under, I don't know who they would have gotten necessarily that would be better than Christie.
Right. That's a big contention that I have with Hollinger's piece, is the idea of, okay, you could have gotten somebody who would have filled the Max Christie role better than Max Christie. Because just the idea of you could have found somebody else who you think is more either proven than Max Christie or more seasoned, whatever, that may be possible for 5.2. Although, again, for the reasons you brought up with Gary Trent, I also wonder with Tyus Jones as well. I think a lot of this is just going to be opportunity and what your role was going to be. And the Lakers roster, even if they had that 5.2 mil available, I still think Phoenix is more appealing to Tyus Jones, and Gary Trent for Milwaukee is more appealing to Gary Trent because your role will be bigger. I also think that Gary Trent is more duplicative to what is already on the roster than Max Christie is. I mean, Gary Trent used to be thought of as a defensive guy. That was like 3 or 4 seasons ago. He has not been thought of somebody who's a particularly strong defender in a while, or somebody that you would look to actually, if not put on a team's best guard or wing scorer, one of their best ones. It's been a long time since anybody's thought of Trent Jr. like that. And to me, Christie actually, if you believe in him, and made it very clear over the last couple of years, I do believe in him and I wanted him to play more. He profiles to offer much more of what the Lakers don't have on the roster already. It's also interesting, too, for what it's worth. Bit of a side note, Michael Pina on Friday had brought up Tyus Jones as somebody that the Lakers, maybe if they'd handled their offseason business better, could have had, whether after trading D'Angelo Russell or whatever. It is worth noting, and I'm only bringing this up because it occurred to me after the fact as opposed to not mentioning it to Michael, and I wish it had occurred to me. If part of your argument for bringing in Tyus Jones is because you don't believe in D'Angelo Russell in the playoffs, Tyus Jones has been worse in the playoffs than D'Angelo Russell. Like, I remember the series that he played against the Lakers when the Lakers took him out in 2023. He wasn't anything special in that series. And if you look at his numbers, they fall precipitously in the playoffs, like as much, if not more, than D'Angelo Russell's. And he's like 4 inches shorter than D'Lo. Like, he is really small. He is somebody who's going to be a defensive liability on his best day because he's just a little guard. So it is worth noting, just with the Tyus Jones conversation in general, I don't think he's a better player than D'Angelo Russell anyway. But if your argument is D'Lo in the playoffs, I don't think Tyus Jones helps there at all.
One of the things that I think, and I agree with you, one of the things that I think jumps out about this is it is kind of a continuation. And I like that we sort of saw this. I think the story that he wrote came out on Friday. as we were posting the show with Michael. And it's a nice extension of that conversation, because a lot of this is related to, in John's premise, whether you agree with the analysis or not, the premise is very similar to Michael's, which is the Lakers aren't doing enough to literally do like everything they can to maximize this moment with LeBron. And I think that is very much part of John's analysis of this situation too, which I think has some merit. But the question I think that's important here too is, like, if you're going to give up an asset, a 21-year-old player, for an organization that has very little access to players like that, it needs to be for something that is a clear upgrade. And like you told me, like, you got to sacrifice Max Christie, but you can get, I don't know, name a not an all-star wing, but like somebody who is in that space where you can say, like, this guy's really good. He's definitely better than Max Christie right now, and it's a clear improvement. They're like, okay, even if it's 2 years and 3 years down the line, you might say, gosh, I wish we still had Max Christie around. You need the player who's better right now. It's
Derek Jones Jr. Derek Jones Jr.
Okay, like, I forget what he ended up signing for with the Clippers, but it was a lot more than $5 million. And so, at least I think it was. Maybe I'm wrong. You can look at something like that and say there's an argument to be made there. But unless, like, the Lakers, it's very much like, as much as we criticize Pelinka, for example, the one thing
you are correct, it is double what
it was, like 11. I think it was like 11 or something, or 11,
about
or
10 or 11 a season, somewhere between 9 to 10-ish a season.
Yeah, so that's not 5. The one thing I always say with Pelinka is I need to know what he said no to, not what the other team said no to. I need to know what he said no to before I can 100% say that he's doing a terrible job with something. Like, I can criticize the path that gets the Lakers to the point they're at, but for saying, well, how come he didn't make X, Y, and Z trade? How come he hasn't moved D'Angelo Russell? How come he hasn't improved that spot or figured out how to find a wing? I need to know what he said no to. And then the second question to that is, I need to know what he tried. Was he not being creative enough? We talked about creativity on Friday. Like, that could be part of it. Are you banging on the right doors? Are you looking under the right rocks and stuff like that? Maybe he's not. But I need to know that. I need to know what he said no to. I just think the Lakers, it is true that the Lakers are in a position where you are giving Christie money that he hasn't necessarily shown himself to be worthy of yet. The flip side of that is, if he had shown himself to be worthy of it, he'd cost a lot more than 8 and 32. And the second part of that is they have to take some risks here on young players who can grow into larger rotation spots, so that hopefully by year 3 or 4 of this deal with Christie, you look at him and say, man, that's a real bargain at $8 million a year. They have to take swings like that because they don't have the roster flexibility to do anything else.
Well, they're hoping that he ends up an even less expensive version of the contract they have for Austin Reeves. And Reeves, we've talked about this before, Reeves needs to get better, I think, to ultimately serve in the role that the Lakers clearly have pictured him in, elevated him towards, even marketed him towards. But taking that separate, if Austin Reeves does not improve one iota for the rest of his career, his contract will still be a bargain for that production. Taking it one step further, it's kind of crazy to say this, but it's true. It's not that difficult in today's NBA to be worth $8 million a season. Like, if you are an NBA player at all, like if you are somebody that is worthy of being on an NBA court,
if you're under 25 or 26 years old, for sure.
What other teams had available to give Gary Trent more along the lines of what he sees himself as? That's a separate story from what does $8 million generally get you in the NBA?
Mhm.
If you are a legitimate rotation player, even like an eighth man, $8 million is perfectly acceptable for that role.
It is. It's one of these things, and we'll move on to Christian Wood here in a second. But like, I'm just pulling up his numbers from last year. He is the point you made about skill set is really important here, because what we learned last year with Jared Vanderbilt is it's not just the skill set itself, it's how much of your skill set is replicated other places in the roster. And the answer with Jared Vanderbilt was apparently nowhere. It's like nowhere. And Christie, the 3-point shooting last year was replicated by Taurean Prince. You could argue that some of the defense was replicated by Reddish in some ways. I think some of that's overrated, but whatever. Like, in one player, though, it wasn't necessarily there in the same way. And so you look at somebody like Christie, and as Hollinger says, the outlines are there for a reasonable 3-and-D guy. The Lakers last year, when he did play, spent a lot of time making him a point guard and having him handle the ball, and his turnover rate went up and all these other things. And part of this is really going to be on Redick to use him in the most effective ways possible that allow him to be the best version of himself that he can, create a defined role for this sort of year one in the rotation, and allow him to expand on that as time goes on, or if he's successful. But really don't spend a lot of time asking him to do things he's not really ready to do, at least not in minutes that matter. Let's talk about Christian Wood, another potential impact player for the Lakers that they need to rebound, metaphorically and literally. We'll get to it next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we got something a little different for you. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 on whatever, and you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. I can promise you, in terms of value, that is a bargain for a $5 investment. That's a steal, frankly. And then with the YouTube TV-based plan, you will be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need to do is get a Google account, which you probably already have anyway, current form of payment, likely have that anyway, and you can cancel anytime. And while you start getting ready to sign up, you can think about the 24-25 odds for the upcoming NBA season. Anthony Davis, as of this recording, 150-1 for MVP. LeBron, 200-1. Anthony Davis, 25-1 for Defensive Player of the Year. Dalton Knecht, 10-1 for Rookie of the Year. Max Christie, who we were just discussing, 150-1 for Most Improved Player. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and download America's #1 sportsbook.
So if you're making a list, Andy, of players on the home squad here who can make, in a season where they did not add to the roster, where the names are basically the same, where can they make the most internal improvement? Obviously, Dalton Knecht's ability to, at the very least, fill the Taurean Prince role adequately is going to be really important. Hopefully exceed that. Max Christie is going to do a little bit of that too, and they need him to make a jump. Another 10% out of Austin Reeves would make a huge difference. But one of the glaring holes in this roster is behind Anthony Davis. What do the Lakers do for bigs after AD? And it's the same group as last year. It's Christian Wood and it's Jackson Hayes. I think at this point we know what Hayes is. Expecting a lot of upside there, to me, feels unrealistic. Compared to what he did last year. I think if he can give you exactly the same thing, that's great. Christian Wood, however, I do think there is space between what he provided the Lakers last year and what his sort of the ceiling for his impact could be this year. And Christian Wood, at least judging by his social media, seems to agree.
Yeah, Christian Wood posted on Instagram, "I'm back, y'all, and I'm coming back next season with a vengeance." And it's funny, when you and I were talking about Max Christie and the idea of how him being properly utilized and living up to his end of the bargain could feel in certain respects like it's not quite an impact free agent, because that's letting Rob Pelinka off the hook for work that he, at the very least, did not complete. Like,
right.
you don't get credit for impending free agents that were not actually free agents.
Right. Because also too, it's like you are allowed to be like, you know what, we're going to get internal improvement from Max Christie and sign free agents.
Right. Of course. That's what I'm saying.
Or create a roster that allows flexibility. Both of those things are allowed to happen at the same time.
Exactly. But it doesn't change the fact that Christie being utilized that way and holding up his end of the bargain could feel like the same effect of a new player on the roster. And we've also talked about with Jared Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent, who basically both had lost seasons last year. If they are back next year and consistently healthy and play the way that the Lakers expected when they signed Vincent, re-signed, extended Jared Vanderbilt, that those guys could feel like the impact of new free agents, even if they are not actually credited as free agents. Christian Wood, in a lot of ways, feels like a combination of both those guys, because he missed 32 games last year, very backloaded absences, especially as you're heading into the postseason. And that's really where a guy like him, in theory, would matter the most. And also, too, it never felt like they found a role for him where they as a team, and especially Christian Wood, felt comfortable. So there's the idea of, can JJ Redick find different, better ways to more effectively use Christian Wood, use him in more of his comfort zone, play him to his strengths. Both of us thought last year, as uncomfortable as he was, I think he leaned into his asks. I think he was trying to do exactly what they wanted from him. But
yeah, I mean, the irony about his numbers last year is the impact that he had was actually far more negative offensively than defensively. Like, if you look at his on-off ratings, and I was looking at Cleaning the Glass earlier just to kind of check this stuff out. I was like, oh man, it overall is almost dead flat, but it's because he was a positive defensively, and the offense was much worse with him on the floor.
Yeah, and they really, I think,
the opposite of what you would expected given his reputation.
Absolutely, and I think they missed his work on the defensive glass. Like, that was an area where Christian Wood well exceeded what I thought he would be bringing to the table heading into this season. Like, he was quite good at whatever you think of him as an individual defender. He was quite good at ending opposing possessions by just getting the loose ball, and that's the end of it. Offensively, though, last year was the lowest field goal attempts, 5.3 per game, that he's had since basically establishing himself as an NBA player. And it is, to be fair to Wood, difficult for somebody like him, who has been a volume scorer in a lot of ways. And you can argue about whether it's been empty calories volume or not, because that is also part of Christian Wood's reputation. But it is difficult for somebody like him to find maximum efficiency in that limited of opportunities offensively. I'm not saying that they can or should start, reinventing the offense around Christian Wood. That would be a big mistake. But I do think they need to find ways to get him a few more touches, but also just make sure he's getting those touches in the best place to utilize him as a scorer, and to use his entire complement of scoring abilities, because he can actually score from a few different spots on the floor.
He's one of those guys, same conversation, skill set. Where does it come from? And they don't, he is the only offensively talented backup big. Again, no disrespect to Jackson Hayes, energy guy, putbacks, offensive rebounds, fine. But he can't create a shot. He's not a creative offensive player. He's not a particularly skilled offensive player by NBA standards. If he showed up to my pickup game, he would look quite good. That's not the point. Wood, with the rebounding, is something that they badly need. It's the only guy who can kind of combine the ability to rebound with the ability to score and rim protect a little bit. Like, even when in his worst sort of, Christian Wood is we'll call him an ineffectual defender. Somebody, just whatever word you want to come. He's always been a pretty decent rim protector. He'll go block a shot for you. And so, like, where else are you going to find that? He's not going to be 35 pounds heavier, which is, something the Lakers wish they had, that big burly center to back up AD, but he can play with Davis.
Nor is he going to be 3 or 4 inches taller. I mean, in reality, he's closer to a power forward than a center.
Right. But he functions, in a lot of ways as a center just because of his
Sure.
length.
I'm just talking, though, in terms of Christian Wood being who he is, as opposed to what he's not that you could use more of on the roster.
Right. It's easy to forget he's 6'8", 6'9".
That's what I mean. He's not he's not Jackson Hayes' size.
Correct. And so, you look at when you look at all these different things, they need him to be something closer to. He's a skillful player. He's a problematic player. He's flawed. He's all these things, but he's skillful. And you can't be somebody who's put up the kinds of numbers that he has, as all over the place as he's been, disappointing as he's been, and not be skillful. And so that's not the issue. When you talk about how is JJ Redick going to get 3 or 4 more games out of this team, 5 more games than Darvin Ham did? It's stuff like this. It's how do you it's creatively maximizing Christian Wood so he gets, like you said, 6 shots, 7 shots, 8 shots a game, maybe, instead of 3 or 4 or 5. He might be one of those guys you do have to give a little bit more leeway to in order to get the most out of him. And hopefully, he's got to earn that flexibility, but hopefully he can. It's maximizing the combinations with Christie. It's not asking guys to do what they aren't good at, and it's not putting guys who shouldn't be on the floor as much as they were last year.
But I do think, though, that there is some logic to the idea that a better utilized and obviously healthy Christian Wood, put it this way, of all the 3 minimum guys that they gave a player option to, which has obviously come back to bite the Lakers in the ass because all 3 guys opted in. You combine that with D'Lo opting in.
And if you want to get yourself in the Cam Reddish business, you better come with an option.
But Christian Wood is the one guy that you could look at and say, all right, I get it. I understand that he went very, very late into free agency without getting offers. He clearly thought the market should have been more robust for himself, and was holding out as long as he could. But Christian Wood was the one guy that you're like, look, if he plays as well as we think he can, there's no way in hell he's signing another minimum deal. So who cares?
Put this way, Jackson Hayes, to however long he plays in the NBA, and I hope he has a long career and sticks around, whatever, is never going to make more than somewhere between the minimum and maybe, a biannual exception or something. He's always going to be a
taxpayer, maybe
2 or 3 or 4, maybe a taxpayer, maybe. But $2, $3, $4 million a year, which, nice work if you can get it. Cam Reddish, if he sticks in the league, is always going to be a minimum player. I think Wood, if he has a really nice season as tax player, you could see somebody giving, especially if he shows he can do it on a good team. Then his options expand. It's a taxpayer mid-level. It's something like that. It's 4 or 5, maybe $6 million. And there's a big difference between a $10 million contract and $20 million. He's older. So he needs, when he says he's back with a vengeance, he's kind of playing potentially for one last shot at a, multi-year, multi-million dollar contract, as opposed to the 2.7 he's playing now. And he's trying to double that and make something long-term out of it. And he's actually got the skill set to do it. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to hang out with over 25,000 subscribers. Thanks again for making Locked On Lakers your first listen today. Go check out the Locked On NBA podcast. You can find the link right in the show description, so you don't need to search for it. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll see everyone tomorrow.